Amnesty released a report identifying Israel as sustaining an apartheid regime under international law. Of course, Israel and the pro-Israel echo chamber and Israel's allies in the West were very pissed. But also I noticed that there are Palestinians who are unimpressed. So I thought I'll make this video about the strategic significance of the report for the Palestinian cause. If I should summarize in the most simple terms, Israel can do whatever it wants to us right now because it is more powerful than us. And the reason it is more powerful is, to a large extent, because it has the explicit or tacit support of a broad segment of the so-called international community. And it benefits from the existing world order. I was in a conversation recently with an elder gentleman who's a Palestinian with a longer career in Palestine activism. And he said something that stuck with me. He said the reason that we cannot or we could not defeat Israel is that we are not only fighting Israel. And this is true. We are actually fighting the entire world order. Nearly every global system of oppression intersects upon us. It's not fair that as Palestinians, our oppression happens at the intersection of so many different systems of supremacy and injustice. It's not fair that we have to be on all of these battlefields at the same time, and we didn't choose this, but we have to do it. Ultimately, what is our cause? What is our goal? We want to live in peace and prosperity and liberty and dignity upon our own land. We want an end to our constant generational humiliation. We want an acknowledgement and a remedy to the grave historical injustices and the successive traumas that were inflicted upon us. We want a true, just peace to flower in the Holy Land. All of this is impossible so long the power differential is so severely tipped in Israel's favor. Israel right now holds all of the cards. It has global support. It faces absolutely no accountability. Meanwhile, Palestinians, especially our leadership, are divided and have no response. We have no responsible leadership, really, and we don't have a national vision. Of course, a lot of the dysfunction in our own camp, in the Palestine movement broadly, is by design. It's a feature and not a bug of the current system. But this video is not about that. It's a video about why we have to think strategically and use all emergent spaces and opportunities for our cause. Now, it's important for us to erode our oppressors' international support, such that supporting them becomes politically toxic for a government or for a party or for a politician globally. This is, of course, not currently the case. The shortest available path towards that reality available to us is if Israel becomes widely acknowledged as sustaining an apartheid regime. Now, I know that there are multiple frameworks from which we can analyze our own subjugation. There are multiple frameworks from which we can analyze the oppression that's been visited upon us. One of those is the apartheid framework. And currently, it is backed by international law, international scholars, and now the entire wall-to-wall support of the human rights community. This is the shortest available path to us right now. If, or rather when, this is normalized and it spills over from within the human rights community to the rest of civil society and from there to society at large, that is when the actual BDS campaign will start. These campaigns will have the passionate backing, of course, of the global human rights community and international law scholars. It might be, I don't think this is imminent. It might take a few years. It might take 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, but I think it's inevitable. Once these campaigns spread and intensify, they will bring millions of people into the Palestine solidarity movement. Amnesty alone is a membership organization of 10 million people. Bringing all of these people into the Palestine solidarity movement is not going to be only about manpower. It's going to also allow us to expand our reach, our resources, our network, our influence, and ultimately our power. What we do within that space, that expanded space, that'll be up to us. The sky's the limit. It requires our own ingenuity, our own creativity. So to summarize, it is a strategic objective for us to erode our oppressors' power and increase our own power. It is a strategic objective for us to erode our oppressors' international support and increase our own. Therefore, it is a strategic objective for us to ensure that the apartheid framing is normalized across the world. Towards this, the Amnesty report is a watershed moment. Amnesty and Human Rights Watch are the world's largest human rights organizations, and now they both agree that Israel is an apartheid regime. It's a watershed moment because this is now not just a couple organizations. It's not, before we were talking about Human Rights Watch and a couple organizations, in the Palestinian civil society organizations, and a couple Israeli human rights organizations. Now we're talking about the majority, the largest organizations in the human rights community. This is indeed very big. Ultimately, for us Palestinians, we know that Amnesty is not going to liberate Palestine. The international community, of course, is not going to liberate Palestine. The global human rights community, they can be allies, but ultimately they're not going to liberate Palestine. But this is a very important step, and we really need to fully heed what its significance is, and we need to use the opportunities that it creates. International law, I acknowledge, has hegemonic roots, and it needs to be decolonized. And I also acknowledge that the human rights framework also has hegemonic roots, and it needs to be decolonized. But to go from here to say that, this report is meaningless, I think is rather silly, to be honest. We do not have the luxury not to use the space that is expanding before us. If we cannot think strategically and beyond the horizon of the foreseeable, we will always be living in waithood. We're waiting for that perfect imagined liberation to come, and we'll be rejecting or missing strategically significant opportunities towards our liberation on our return. Palestine was not occupied on a single day. There were 31 years between 1917, the Balfour Declaration, and the Nakba. That's a generation. Palestinian liberation is also a generations-long project. We need to open and use spaces and build power, because I know that it's going to take another generation. A new generation has to carry on our fight, and we have to open spaces for them and build power for them. Now, I don't know if you agree or disagree, but I encourage your feedback, and I just want to remind, be thoughtful and be nice. Anything related to Palestine brings forth very strong feelings on both sides, and it uncovers deep traumas. Thank you so much. This is what I wanted to share with you today.
يا مصطفى يا كتابا من كل قلب تألف